And I Quote is bringing you expert-to-expert advice and insights. Our thought-provoking conversations with insurance industry professionals will inspire and educate our listeners on the latest trends and hot topics.
Let's move our industry forward together. The And I Quote podcast is brought to you by Coterie Insurance. Coterie is simplifying the way agents work with small business.
Now let's get started.
Welcome, everyone, to another edition of And I Quote podcast. Today, I have a good friend, which I'm super excited to talk to, Karnina Szymanski from Bold Penguin. Welcome, Karnina.
Yes, it's great to see you, as always, Bobbie. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
I remember our first conversation in Colorado Springs at the Broadmoor, and it was just we're just trying to have a really nice conversation and got interrupted several times, and it's just a funny and awkward memory, not of you but with you. And well, in that point, since then you've gotten promoted, so talk to us a little bit about your role at Bold Penguin.
Yeah, it's been quite an evolution. I joined Bold Penguin in 2020. And, that's a familiar year because it was just right as we were figuring out what this pandemic was. And I was transitioning from a long career working for insurance carriers. So coming into Bold Penguin was my first real experience in the insurtech space. And I'm at the height of the pandemic where we were finding out that there was this bigger need for agents to figure out a way that they could interact with their customers, digitally, really. As digital folks, it was a great timing. At that time, I came in to really advocate for the customer and have an insurance eye on what we were building. We just wanted to make sure that the products we were building always kept the customer in mind. And so I came in to really bring that insurance expertise and that depth of knowledge of the product space. But over time, that has really evolved and led to me moving from the president of insurance to the chief customer officer, because I'm able to work with a really, really broad suite of customers and build these deep relationships. And, it's so nuanced, the insurance industry, especially the commercial line space. So, it allows me to work with different sizes and types of customers to help them find the products and services, they really need to power up the growth they want to see. So I've really been able to transition that experience from the product space into, supporting customer relationships of all types and sizes.
It's been super fun for me to watch because way back when, this is like legacy carrier, back when I was in underwriting still, I met Ben and Ilya when it was just Ben and Ilya, and Bold Penguin was just an idea. So it's been really fun to kind of like reflect on that initial conversation, which was a little bit, interesting and awkward. And like, it was kind of like this vision of this idea. And what are we now? Maybe 8 years later, see what has been built and the team that they put together to carry this idea forward. It's been a ton of fun.
Similarly, I probably met Ilya and Ben around the same time as a customer of their product initially. And now, there were times when there's a lot of doubt in the industry. It's too complicated. It's too fractured a space for us to allow technology to make it simpler and easier. But now we're seeing it happen. And, I have a lot, we can share with each other about what we've seen from the, adoption. But especially seeing Coterie and seeing, a product and a market that's so digitally focused and sophisticated, that's also been emerging in our industry. And so that's what I mean when I say we immediately had so much synergy, with a product like Coterie, because we have the same vision to believe that we can make this a whole digital experience for the agency and their end customer.
Yeah, absolutely. So speaking of the synergies, your role is probably super fun, but also very dynamic, relationship based in many different directions, including Coterie and agents, and to some degree, the policyholders too. Talk a little bit to us about the key parts of your strategy that kind of help you connect with, your target audience, because you have a few of them. And then, also like, if you think about your time with Bold Penguin, like out of that strategy, what's one thing that came out of that you're super proud of and super excited that you saw go to market?
Our product roadmap It's really critical that we have a really collaborative roadmap because when we look at some of our partners, we want to understand what they're seeing in the industry. And so, at Bold Penguin, we sit in the middle of the agent and the product. And so we
Yep.
want to make sure that being that middle player, we're communicating on both sides what the agent's needs, what their clients' needs are, the carrier, making sure we understand where their products are, where their goals are, and we want to really align those and really understand, from carriers, our MGA partners, all of our capacity providers, what are they seeing from not only today but years down the road, where do they expect their product to meet the needs of their agent base so that we can align with them and create a roadmap that matches and aligns with that vision. And so some of our most exciting new products, I think, are really really illustrate that cooperation. So I think of what we call our storefront. We originally built the storefront product for really large digitally enabled agencies that were working to fulfill small business needs on a national basis. And they really need to be as efficient as possible. And they needed to meet their customers, where their customers are. And some of their customers want to call, speak to someone in person. Some of them want to start their quoting experience and education piece themselves online. So we built a storefront that was highly customized to the needs of some of our largest customers we'd had deep relationships with for years. But then we started hearing from our retail agents and more Main Street agents saying, we also want to be able to compete in this digital space and allow our customers to, at least do some of their own quoting and discovery online. But we know that some of the Main Street agents don't necessarily have a tech group and a really large technology budget. So we were able to adapt the storefront design to allow, it to be more approachable, and for an agent that doesn't have that type of, that type of expense or the wherewithal to still be able to compete online by using our storefront, still with their own logo and their color profile on their website to allow their online shoppers as well. So, we've also really doubled down on our data analytics products. And that has allowed us as well to work with some of the biggest products out there so that they can take a lot of work out of the underwriting process. Because we know that, from a downstream effect, we don't want agents to have to wait for days, weeks, months to be able to get a quote back for their client. So we've taken a lot of work out of that underwriting process and done a lot of ingestion work with our artificial intelligence so that we can make that process more streamlined, not only for on the product side, but also the agents are realizing that as well because they're seeing faster turnaround time and more accuracy, better accuracy, and less just back and forth with underwriting. So I think that really exemplifies how we really, really partner closely and listen to our customers and understand that even though we have all different types of customers and they have different focus points and strategies, we can still build solutions, that works for them as long as we're communicating.
Yeah. Well, and that's why our partnership works so well. Because we've built our product at Coterie to integrate really easily with products like Bold Penguin. And we might be the fastest response. I don't know, Karnina. Are we close to being like the fastest response on your platform? Because we're pretty darn quick.
You not only are, very fast, but also very accurate. And, that balance is the hardest piece. And yes, you are the top in digital sophistication. Because we don't want it to be fast, but require a lot of editing and lack of reliability in the rates that you're offering. But you have this perfect sweet spot of both of those, and so we really trust your product, and we've seen it grow with agents who are discovering it, and we can confidently say, like, you can trust the rates that are on the screen because of your digital sophistication for sure.
I love it. So speaking of agents, and you mentioned a little bit like AI data analytics, like how would you suggest today, because we have come a long way in the last 5 years, to your point, with COVID and the almost forced a digital transformation within our industry, which was a fun time for you and I to join the InsurTech side of the
right.
But as you think about the independent agents, like how should they be leveraging technology and data to empower how they acquire new customers? I think you have an interesting point of view and probably a little bit different data than what I have. So would love to hear your thoughts on that, Karnina.
Yeah, I was just mentioning that technology has become more approachable. It's become more affordable. It's become more trustworthy. The quality has improved, but it still can be overwhelming for an agent to figure out how to get started when you hear so many different ideas, but you have so many technology needs. So what I always suggest to agents is to integrate new technology into what already exists for you. So, most agents will have an agency management system, maybe a CRM to manage their client portfolios and their book of business. And so, to integrate a technology like Bold Penguin, where you're able to get multiple quotes from, various carriers, you can start with an integration into your existing agency management system. That way, you're using the familiar and you're bringing all the data together into a workflow. It's really hard when you try to integrate a new technology into your world without the different pieces not really speaking to each other. But bringing those together and allowing the technology to complement the human factor is what normally leads to a much more success. I mean, our technology assists the customer all the way from prospecting and really uses data analytics to help agents get prospects from the Bold Penguin Exchange that really fit their needs and they can be the most successful at. And then from that journey all the way into acquisition, we're able to use our data analytics to pass information, not only beginning from the agency management system, but interacting back with the agency management system so you can bring all the data together. So you can imagine as an agent, you're able to not only manage your book, but you can interact with your customer over time because you can provide those updates and anticipate their needs based on the coverages they already have and the ones they need without adding, unnecessary staff and costs into that workflow, but still being able to, again, from an overwhelming perspective, add the new technology with what you're already comfortable using.
Yeah. And that's kind of one of our key tenets too at Coterie, which is probably why we get along so well as partners, is just let's figure out a way to make sure that we can be in the systems and in the technology that agents want to work in versus forcing them to come to our dashboard. We have a dashboard, but we'd rather be wherever you're working just to make it easier for you. And I think Bold Penguin has figured out how to do exactly the same. So,
be
awesome.
where the customer sort of how they want to shop, when they want to shop, where they're comfortable interacting. That's why our data analytics is really critical to this entire journey because there are different technologies used within the workflow. And so we want to make sure they're all speaking to each other and we're not creating more administrative work for our agency partners than was necessary.
Absolutely. Well, and like all of us, we just want to be more efficient and more effective in our roles, right? Agents included. And so you talked a little bit, Karnina, about personalization and being really able to understand, customer needs and how they're changing. How does Bold Penguin navigate that automation and personalization to their policyholders and customers? And I think that's something that I think would be really fun for you to touch on because a lot of our audience is agents. And that's something that not a lot of platforms or tech partners are doing for them right now.
We work with over 19,000 agents right now at Bold Penguin. And I think, we're an example of how you can work with all different sizes of agents and still make technology work. And one of the ways we do that is to make it work for all different customer types and needs. And that's part of our personalization, our customization of our technology. So it starts from the beginning, Bobbie, of allowing the agent to adopt certain features of our technology and which types of markets they want to empower, which types of products really work for them and they want to enable within the technology. It goes through to what type of prospects they're really good at. We have some agents that have relatively new producers, or they've had, a bit of retirement. So they're hiring regularly and they really don't have time to, spend a year helping the agent get comfortable with and memorizing all the different types of products and appetites their providers have. And so we want to make that technology really approachable and intuitive to them and make sure they're able to modify which types of products their agents have access to. And when you think about our storefront, as I mentioned before, we have a storefront where we allow our end user to design their own user experience. They can design their own user interface, or we can make a user interface available for them. So really, we're adapting it so that it just really fits the very unique style of the agent that's using the technology.
Yeah. So I love what you guys are doing at Bold Penguin, and I'm going to completely switch gears here in a moment. But before I switch gears, just like Karnina's opinion on, with the amount of innovation we've injected into our industry, what do you think is going to be like the next big thing for agents in the next 5 years? And how will that change the way that they work with, carrier partners, with Bold Penguin, and with policyholders?
With the emerging risks we're seeing constantly, I'm thinking about before hearing about cyber insurance, for instance, and it was just this thing that we didn't fully understand how it was going to work and, where it was going to be necessary to small business owners. And now we've seen regulations now requiring that business owners have cyber insurance and that leading to an acceleration of growth. And you can take that down to parametric insurance. I was just reading earlier this year, parametric insurance, the reinsurance market has posted some articles on how we saw 40% growth in that industry between 2021 and 2022 alone, and an expectation of ongoing growth of 9%. So I say all that to say is coverage is getting more complex. And it's getting more nuanced for the needs of the small business owner. And with that, we have these like fantastic new market leaders, including Coterie, that is digitally focused and sophisticated, right? And so for an agent perspective, keeping up with all of this complexity, they're really, really going to need to lean into technology to take out all of these routine tasks and administrative steps like data entry so that they can really focus on being that advisor to their customer. And if they really want to lean into being that, that counselor to their customer and making sure they have the proper coverage and explaining and really helping them protect their assets, they just have to take all of that data entry out of the process. And, I envision that technology is just going to complement, not replace that human factor. And the human factor is going to become ever more necessary. I mean, that's exemplified by the fact that a few years ago, there was so much conversation about, direct players, direct consumer for commercial lines. And I'm not saying there's not a space for that, because certainly there's a space for that on, especially on the smaller end of small business. But, really what you've seen is carriers actually adopt, even if they started direct consumer, adopt the agency channel, because they really have come to understand that the small business owner needs that partner with the agent to really, really advise them, and to build that trust and that relationship. So I really think the success of agency will come in really harnessing that relationship building, and understanding their client and their needs and the emerging risk of our industry, and just using technology to take out the unnecessary.
Yeah, I agree. Like when I first started, I feel like a lot of agents would say their value proposition is how they service their clients. And now we have, two things. One, we have more complicated exposures that are coming at insureds. And we have technology to complement and or replace some of those servicing tasks that agents used to have to do. So I think, to your point, there needs to be a shift from like service and risk advisory. It's going to like go this way for the average agent. And like to your point too, the way Coterie is underwriting and pricing risk, it's not class-based. It's very individual risk specific, right? And so right now we're on the micro, really small commercial. That's where we play. But as we move up market, we're going to have to get agents more involved, right? most likely. And we're going to have like, trusted risk advisors to help us individually underwrite those risks that maybe we don't have enough third-party data for, right? So yeah, I'm excited to see where the industry goes in the next few years. I'm also terrified of emerging risks because it's changing so quickly. And, like, I don't know what's going on with this weather, but ice fishing was almost non-existent in Wisconsin this winter. So my father was really disappointed in the climate change that we're seeing. So hopefully that was just a fluke. But yeah, I just the erratic behavior of the weather and just random events has really had an impact on our industry.
I'm similarly, sitting here in Southern California, remember when we were talking about droughts for years, and now we're, swimming. I was in Palm Springs this weekend, and it was cold and rainy, which you wouldn't expect from Palm Springs this time of the year. And so I think we're all experiencing a little piece of that, which is interesting, but we want to move up market with you. And that's the thing, we don't only have a vision for the small, it's where we're expert. But from a roadmap perspective, we do understand that even smaller risks are growing in complexity in many ways. And so we want to leverage the technology to help with cross-selling and to present what other coverage options could be available and use those education tools to, support the agent. But we really do know that it's that relationship building piece that's going to be very special. And so what we want to do is remove all of the wasted time that prevents the agents from spending the time talking to their customer. And that goes all the way through from prospecting to servicing, and it allows them to really double down on that relationship and interacting with the customer throughout the year, more on updates and educating them based on the data we're providing, as opposed to, just spending the time in that data entry world ready for renewal period, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, and let's be real, like small business owners are not going to read an insurance contract. They're not going to understand the coverages that are or are not covered. We're seeing some of that even within our own claims team of just, like a misunderstanding or an assumption of coverage. And that's where agents really need to be spending their time doing that risk advisory work. Yep. I'm going to switch gears a bit before we wrap up. So you and I are both advocates for women leaders in our industry. And so I always love to, when I get someone like you on our podcast, just to talk a little bit about, some of the challenges you've had as coming through the industry as a female, and any advice that you might give some women in our industry who are kind of battling through some of the battles that you and I have both experienced.
I love that. It's one of my favorite subjects, but it's also can be one of the most uncomfortable. And so I love that I have the opportunity to speak to someone like you so we can take away that discomfort, in it. But for, just many decades in our industry, we didn't have the representation I think we're starting to see a little bit more of today. And before that representation was there, it was really difficult to speak up when you were in an environment that just wasn't designed for a woman in the industry. And that goes into the little things, the little day-to-day things, like, let's travel to a city where we have to hike, across the city and look fantastic in heels, dragging your luggage, and spend, that extra time being ready and prepared because it was so important how you present yourself. It seems like sometimes as important as what you were trying to say. And there were moments I can tell you, and not only working in claims, but working, just in the industry and traveling and visiting people, where I'd experienced some of the most unsettling comments and kind of mid-presentation and speech, anywhere from, how nice you look in your sweater to, how attractive you are, but do you really understand the industry? Assuming that you're younger than you are, trying to be concerned that you present yourself in the way that you feel good about the way you look, and that you're bringing your authentic self into how you look. but also being afraid that, you're too attractive for the audience, or that will be a distraction of itself from what you're trying to say and what your experience is, and, what your knowledge is and what you're trying to, get across to an audience. So when you think about all that has to go into your mindset and your preparation for even just engaging and meeting with business partners, it can be not only very unsettling for women, I think, and uncomfortable, but it's hard to speak up when you don't have other women leaders that you can, share some of this with, because you don't really have an outlet. And so you can't really speak about it with someone who's experienced the same and has those shared experiences. I mean, I think that this industry has definitely evolved, and, we're seeing, I want to say, more inclusivity in the leadership ranks. But I think we still have a long way to go, because, for me, even being as a woman of color, and, I meet many, many women of color, the representation ranks gets ever thinner. And so every time you add more, adversity in the way, because there's not as many people like you, the more it makes it really difficult to find someone that you can share some of what you're going through with. And part of that sharing, that alone makes the road a little bit easier. Just knowing that you can have someone that you can trust and speak to about it, that makes that road a little bit easier. And I always say I've had some really great mentors, and people that I trusted, that, certainly were men and certainly didn't necessarily look like me as well. And I has appreciated that they have taken me under their sort of like embraced me and tried to advocate and support me. So I don't want to minimize that. That definitely exists. I just think as humans, there's comfort in being able to speak to someone who's representative of your life experiences. And being a woman in this industry, that's really, really important that we keep understanding that and growing that voice in our industry, because, it's important for so many reasons. You can tell I can speak in volumes about this.
I know this is a topic we're both very passionate about. In fact, we might have had a couple of experiences together where things were uncomfortable. And I remember you and I just talking about, getting on stage and making sure you never wear a skirt when you're talking on a panel on stage for any conference. Like, it's always pants. Just, make sure that, what you're saying is being heard, and that your thought leadership is why you're up there. So I reflect back on some of that, and I truly believe too, Karnina, that we have an opportunity to start to mentor to young men in our industry, to better understand the diversity of thought and the diversity of emotional intelligence too that women bring to the table. So hopefully, we're kind of grooming the young men in our industry to be more inclusive and more open-minded than maybe the men that we dealt with that were maybe towards the end of their career as we entered the industry. So I'm super excited that you and I will at least have a little bit of a fingerprint on moving forward.
And I agree with you. I think men have such an integral role to play. That's why I don't want to ever shut that out of the conversation, because I think it's integral. It takes all of our voices, because, we all bring different life experiences that help us build products for a diverse customer base, and we need all of us. But I agree. I think we also have to mentor men to be, aware of some of the forces that are at work. And I think even for me, advocating for young women that I see just coming into the industry, to be willing to have accountability when I'm involved or hear conversations that, I know aren't inclusive and welcoming. So, even for me, I think that strengthens and what you said about putting our thumbprint on it, and that change, that gives me courage, because, it's that feeling you have as a leader, that I know what it was like for me and what I went through, and I'm going to make sure that things are ever better and more welcoming for others, and that's I think why we both embrace leadership, because that's part of it. That's the integral part of it. It's not just, for the sake of the title or for the sake of the job. It's how we influence, the future of our industry.
influence the future people of our industry, and also influencing innovation with our industry. I don't know. It's been such a pleasure getting to know you, and working with Bold Penguin has been so much fun. I truly think that, you and I both share a passion for moving our industry forward, both through people and through innovation. And that's why we kind of click, and we get along so well. So, but Karnina, it was fantastic having you on today. I always ask one final question. If you were an MLB player, what would your walk-up song be?
I always love the Weeknd's Save Save Your Tears for Another Day. I don't
Awesome.
know. I'm always about positivity, even in the midst of the storm. So I always have this rallying cry of like, confront the challenges,
Yes.
and I think I love that question, and I love. I'm a Pirates fan, and so I have, I've had visions of myself out there on the field. I don't know if I'm ever going to earn that opportunity, but I really appreciate the question. Just in case it does happen, I have my song ready.
Karnina, it was so great to have you. Thanks for being a guest on the show, and thanks for being such a good partner to Coterie. We appreciate you and all that your team does, and I'm looking forward to hopefully running into you soon somewhere in the conference world of our insurance industry. Coterie is continuously innovating to bring our partners and agents the best solution for their small commercial book of business. Check out our producers resources page by clicking the link in the show notes below.